Okay, it's been a while since I sat at the Wrap It Up desk, so here we are at the Wrap It Up desk. We've gone through a lot of things. We looked at some economic concerns and understanding basic economic issues, understanding supply and demand, understanding how money works, understanding how inflation works, banking, taxation, and so forth. Most of those things that we went over, the majority of things that we went over in common sense economics, is fundamental not only to the individual but to the aggregate, to the group. Making individual economic choices, very important, of course, because you've got to have money to pay for the here and now and into the future through retirement. How long will you live? Who knows? So you've got to prepare for a short, mid to lengthy retirement. Nobody knows, so you got to be prepared. And also, what about the here and now? How are things going? How's inflation? How's the cost of living? Does the cost of living fluctuate? Is it going to get better? Is it going to get worse? How has the cost of living worked historically? Are you prepared for what's coming? Do you know what's coming? Do you know what's possibly coming? Have you looked at things historically? And this is why it's good to look at history. Not because you don't want to repeat mistakes. I have a lot of students that say that. Why study history? So that we don't repeat mistakes. Well, mistakes are repeated again and again and again. So for an individual, it's important to know historically for one's own sake, financial sake, economic sake, as regards to family, investments, freedoms, constitutional rights, and so forth and so on. All that stuff that I've been giving you is for a purpose. It's for a reason, right? And it kind of culminates in today's topic. What does it mean to be an American, right? And it's all in that key phrase, sovereign. The number one principle, if you're looking at the basic 6 principles of the Constitution, number one principle is that the American citizen is sovereign. We are the kings. We are in charge of the people, by the people, for the people. That's a democracy. When people say it's not a democracy, it is a democracy. It damn well is a democracy. It better be a democracy. But it's not solely a democracy. It's a representative democracy. We have a constitution, the laws of the land, which we follow, which we elect people to follow. You don't want 330 million people running the country making decision by decision efforts. We don't have time for that, right? We don't have time for that. So, anyways, we looked at the Constitution. We looked at the Federalist Papers, which explain the Constitution, which was 3 of the founding fathers, getting people up to speed as to where we had been before the Constitution, the Articles of Confederation. Why were those articles failing? What was needed? It was mostly the executive, right? Because if you look at the Federalist Papers, that's where the majority of the focus is. If you look at Congress, if you look at the bicameral Congress, two parts to it, right? You've got the House and the Senate. As far as the Constitution was concerned, it was just kind of a lay of the land, kind of looking at kind of the schematics of Congress, for the House and for Senate, right? For the Senate. And even the judicial, it had some explanations there for sure, but it was the executive and the need for a strong executive at the federal level, right? Because things weren't being done at the federal level, right? Or couldn't be done at the federal level. You couldn't wage war. You couldn't send troops out to protect the United States. You couldn't enact commerce with other countries. Commerce was failing not only internationally but nationally within the country. Paying for war debt, that was an issue. Without Hamilton there doing his thing, who knows what might have happened to this country. It might have gone belly up financially before anything else happened, right? So that was huge. So Constitution, Federalist Papers, but we also looked at the Declaration of Independence, that which came before those things, right? Kind of a precursor or setup or an understanding as to why A country was seeking its independence, not a declaration of war, but when you're telling a country that is colonizing you that we seek our independence, you might as well declare war. Not a direct declaration of war, but nevertheless it was indirectly so. So you've got those, you've got the Constitution, you've got common sense, you've got to understand basic economics. All right, being an American requires work and effort, right? Being an American requires work and effort. If you live in a fascist state, a communist state, all you got to do is do what you're told, right? And they'll limit everything. Like if you live in North Korea, there's no internet, there's only one television station. If you watch a movie, never mind a romantic movie, if you watch a romantic movie, you and 3 generations of your family will go to prison for that. Your restrictions are in the extreme. Those who have come here from North Korea mention the fact that they believe that the president or the leaders of state were actually reading their minds. They had been propagandized so well, brainwashed so well, controlled so well that they believed that to be true. We actually have a neighbor who came from China who has that paranoia in her. We live in townhouses here, and we've had from the homeowners association, we've had issues with that woman, thinking that we're recording her. We don't have a camera pointed out the window or anything, or saying things about her, or So that is real. That type of communistic control in China, in North Korea, and in many communist states throughout the world, it's real, right? Therefore, that's why this country is one of the most sought after in the world. Millions come here. How do you vote? You vote by your feet, right? Where are you walking? Where are you walking from and to? Millions of people coming here to the United States every year, legal and illegal, right? So that's that. Economics. What else was there? Martin Luther's letter from Birmingham jail. Also understanding what it means to make sure that these freedoms are not only understood, but applied correctly, right? So here's a little statement, some statements here on what it means to be an American, and I'm just going to read through them. Knowing what it means to be an American is important because it signifies an understanding of the shared values, ideals, responsibilities that come with being a citizen in the United States. So it is shared. It is shared amongst the kings and queens, the sovereign people, right? Including a commitment to liberty, equality, pursuit of happiness, life, liberty, pursuit of happiness, right? Or property, if you remember John Locke's original statement, which are fundamental to participating actively, key words there, in civic life and contributing to the country's democracy. It also involves acknowledging the country's history. This is why we're studying history, right? Complexities and ongoing pursuit of justice for all citizens. So that's one of the reasons why I had you read, or we read or went over the letter from Birmingham jail. It's just a small snippet, one incident, right? Many minorities throughout United States history have been persecuted. If think about the Mexican-American War. After that war, if you were Mexican, allegedly, they were told, think of the Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo. That's another one you can read, Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo. If you were Mexican and you lived in the United States, within a year you would become a citizen, right? You would get your citizenship. But that didn't always work out. As a matter of fact, some people in the United States were squatters. They would sit on these people's land and steal their land. They not only didn't get the citizenship, they didn't get the land, right? They didn't get to keep their houses. The houses were stolen from them. So the Mexicans were persecuted. How about the Japanese internment camps during World War II? Well, we were also fighting the Italians and Germans. So why weren't the Italian and German Americans put into internment camps? Why just the Japanese? Some would say, well, they look different, right? There was also the Chinese Exclusion Act in the 18th century, which basically said by race you can't come into this country if you're Chinese, right? The Trail of Tears, the Native Americans who were persecuted, murdered on a very large level, right? So early America was an equal opportunity offender, right? And understanding that history is important. Not continuing to think that history is, or not thinking that history is continuing as it was. Things have certainly changed, and tremendously so for the better in the United States. So that's a point to keep in mind, okay? And I'm not going to get into that stuff right now, maybe someday. So shared values. What does it mean? I've asked my students, what does it mean to be an American? You know, is it based on culture, race, class, socioeconomic status? No, none of those. United States, people that grow up in the United States who don't live in other countries don't realize, probably don't even think about it much, but don't realize how many cultures and races and colors and creeds and classes we have here. Many other countries are not as diverse, right? If you come from the Middle East, there are certain countries, you know, you're just people from from that country live there predominantly, right? Or in China, it's mostly Chinese, or in Russia, it's mostly Russian, or in Korea, it's mostly Koreans, or in Colombia, it's mostly Colombians, right? You don't have such a wide array of people and cultures and backgrounds and religions. That's why tolerance is so essential here, right? And that's a key. So shared values. Shared values, sure. You say, what is that? Well, it's basic Declaration of Independence stuff, constitutional stuff. The people are sovereign. We have the right to life, liberty, pursuit of happiness, property, owning a place. It's very easy to own a place, to buy a house, to buy property, even for business. In many other countries, it's not easy. It's you have to go through a lot of corruption and a lot of payoffs, you know. Like certain Latin America, if you read that book, Common Sense Economics, in certain Latin American countries, it takes 6 months and a team of people to get through all the red tape, and much of it is not legal, to make a point, to get through all that bureaucratic red tape to even get a business off the ground, right? And you probably have to pay people off and pay them off on a regular basis to keep your business alive and moving forward, right? So what it means to be an American is sharing those values of life, liberty, pursuit of happiness, right? Those constitutional values, understanding that we're sovereign, that we, the people, are in control, that the people in Congress, those at the local, state, and national level in Washington, they all work for us, right? Sometimes we forget that. Sometimes we think the government's in control, but we're in control of the government, right? And if the government gets too out of control, we can forget the federal and go to the states and make decisions about what to do at the state level, right? Read your Constitution. There's also a civic responsibility. As a leader, you own this country, right? You're sovereign, you're the king, they're the queen. You own this country, so you have certain civic responsibilities, right? And I'm not just talking about voting, but understanding when you vote, understanding economic concerns, understanding political concerns, understanding the qualifications of those that we put into office. What can they do and not do, right? What are the requirements of a president of the United States? What are the requirements? Do we even know? I've heard people say, well, you don't have to be a community organizer. Well, yes, that is one of the requirements. Being in the community and working with the people, right? And I'm not talking about, making sure that everybody can go shopping on a particular day, but working with the people, and satisfying their basic core needs, right, at a community level. Also understanding what's going on politically, understanding the Constitution, understanding business issues. Somebody said about Trump, well, the country is not a business. It damn well is. And the Congress controls the purse strings, right? Revenue, income, taxation, banking issues, right? So if you know those things, if you know about banking, trade, taxation, which Trump knew or had been practicing for 40 years before he ran for office, right? That's a big plus. That's a big bonus. Obama didn't have that, but he actually had more community experience. Trump had more international experience. He was constantly dealing, remember China. He was constantly dealing with international concerns. So those are some of the basic core requirements of a president. And not every president is going to have like when you apply for a job, you're not going to have every requirement fulfilled, when you start a position. So you can learn on the job as well. But those are some basic requirements. Critical reflection. Being American also involves acknowledging the country's historical, as we talked about, injustices, and actively working towards a more equitable society. So how do you do that? Do you run for office? Do you get involved in the town hall? You can do that, sure, but you don't have to. Just reading up on what's going on, and being there when it's time to vote for things. We vote on a regular basis. We vote for local issues, for state issues, for national issues. So there's always something going on. There's always something that you can learn. There's always something that you can grow from. Cultural awareness, talked about that. Identity formation. For many, identifying as American contributes to a sense of belonging and purpose within the larger community. So that's huge as well, right? So it all works into play. Everything that I've been giving you comes into play in being an American. You have to understand economic concerns for your own sake and for local, state, and national concerns when you vote, right? You definitely have to know something about banking. Trade maybe would be good. Taxation for sure, for yourself definitely, and also our government. How does taxation work? How does borrowing money work? Where does money come from? Right? People think that money comes from is printed and coined, right? Most of it is not. Most of it is just online transactions. Most of the money that is used and generated in the United States is borrowed. Remember we talked about the 150 trillion of funded and unfunded debt? If we didn't have borrowing, nobody would be able to do anything, right? So that's banks, individuals, the government, and businesses. Those four entities, right? Borrow or have borrowed at this point about $150 trillion, right? When you hear about, 33 trillion, the federal debt, that's just federal debt. You've also got bank debt, and you've got business debt, and you've got us, private individuals, our debt too, right? One last thing that I wanted to show you. This is the eagle. I don't know if you can see that. Is that coming up, right? The Great Seal, as they say, right? E pluribus unum, which means from many comes one, right? There's 330 million people here, but we all have the same rights: life, liberty, pursuit of happiness. And we should work to preserve those rights, not only for ourselves, but for everybody, right? Don't inhibit or restrict based on party, religion, race, color, creed, socioeconomic status. Can't do it. Not done here, right? If you're a king, maybe in some faraway land, you can do what you want, but not here. That's not how it works here. So you've got to have the Constitution, that basic pursuit of desire of seeing that everybody gets a basic pursuit of life, liberty, and happiness, right? Also, another thing you'll notice is that, I don't know if you can see it, but in the eagle's claw, he's got 13 arrows wrapped in his claw, all in one, right? That's the 13 original colonies. Then there's 13 stars up here, and there's 13 red and white stripes, right? So that's it for now. So if you're sovereign, what are you waiting for, right? You're the king, you're the queen. Get to work. Do your studying, do your due diligence, apply yourself, and maybe don't just do it for you, do it for others, and do it for those who set up this country, the founding brothers and sisters and mothers and children who all died. Not I don't want to say they all didn't all die. Who many died, to preserve this country and to preserve the opportunity for many of us in the future to have greater and greater opportunities. And that's it for now. So thanks for coming out. Don't forget to get my book, right? I also have this at lulu.com. You can also get the workbook. This is the text. You read through this. This will help you hone your understanding of yourself, and where you are and where you need to go for career purposes, career selections. And this is the workbook. After you've read this, you work through the workbook, or you can do them in combination. However it works best for you. So anyways, so I am going to, after all of that, I am going to now start getting more into the coaching stuff, all right, in regards to, the economic environment, the economic concerns, how things are going out there in the workforce. There's a lot of unemployment in certain states. New York has a lot of unemployment. California has a lot of unemployment. Texas is another one that has a lot of unemployment. So I'm going to kind of keep you up to date on what's going on out there through coming videos. But for now, that's it, and we'll talk to you soon. Take care.